when one looks back on one's life, a lot of things which might seem to have been misfortunes at the time turn out to be great good fortune. I think of it as my good fortune that I lived in the house I was born in till I was over 30. And that was really because I failed a very important exam when I was 11. So instead of going on to higher education, I just stayed where I was and was apprenticed to the textile trade when I was 14 and went on living in my mother's house. It was my mother's house because my father had disappeared when I was 5 years old and was never seen again. Again, looking back on it, I now consider that my good fortune because it left me free to find father figures wherever I could. And I found a number of very good ones in my life. However, as I say, I lived in that house till I was over 30, and then I was married and we moved to another part of the city, not very far away. And we lived next door to a remarkable, disreputable old Russian called Konstantin Solovyensky, I think, although he once told me that for some mysterious reason he had taken the Polish version of his name. He didn't tell me why, but anyway, he'd had all kinds of things happen to him in his life, and I admired him a lot. But as I say, he was disreputable, and he kept a disreputable boarding house. All kinds of people living there, some of whom were on the run from the police and so forth. And so he was our next door neighbour across just a short piece of concrete yard, you know. And in fact, I liked him so much that I named my second book after him. And so this is a poem about him. The Russian landlord who lets next door's once carefully cared for rooms to anybody is angry about the money that's gone from his desk. He doesn't mind whores or coloured students or jailbirds or kids. He trails to the bins in a tatty dressing gown, up at 7:30, shaking his aristocratic head at the evil in men. I like sharing the area with him. Revolutions, pogroms, years in a concentration camp haven't made him despair of human nature. He won't call the police, he never does, or tell the suspect to get his cardboard baggage packed. And he isn't liberal-minded. He'll curse rotten the dirty bastard who robbed him and make life unpleasant deliberately for all his tenants for at least a day and perhaps two. But he can't keep it up. He carries his years gaily. A bow tie and the collar of Astrakhan are popular sights in every local bar. And at 63, it's said, he still has charm to enjoy the guarded virtue of good wives who open their legs to nothing else that isn't legal. May I survive a barbarous age as well. Muttering and miming punches under a clear blue sky, he crunches back to the door across the spillage of cinders from his pail. I watch from the kitchen table, where I've sat all night struggling to be a poet in mid-journey at masterful stretch among the rich imperatives of family life. The Russian pauses, staring at me as though my house is haunted, reluctant to believe I'm up at such an hour. He comes worriedly to my window, certain I must be awake because of children. Is it bad sick, your little ones, he asks. I reassure him. They vomited but are asleep again. He beams, who has never heard of Pushkin, and says, it will be a lovely day. There again. No, please don't clap between poems. It disturbs me. There again, you see, that's about the poem and his relationship to society, certainly with the person next door. And it's somewhat ironic that this person next door has not even heard of his own national poet. He's not at all interested in the fact that his next door neighbour writes poetry. And I suppose many of the people who've been the subject of my poems would not read my poems or anybody else's.